Fred and Sheila McCoy, Hatfield McCoy Museum, Liberty, Kentucky. Hatfield McCoy or FredMcCoy.com rather. Sheila's behind the camera.
Hi guys, hope you're having a great evening.
It's getting late. I was doing some reading again on another topic, and the gentleman was discussing the famous pig trial, famous hog trial from back home that Preacher Ants presided over and so forth. He says that Preacher Ants wasn't the just of the piece over it, that it would have been a Matt Hatfield, but yet he never gives no history or genealogy or nothing on this Matt Hatfield. The story goes on and on, trying to prove that there was never a pig trial. Says that one author had taken it, which now he's correct there. These authors, and Sheila and I have complained about that for years. It's like Ron McCoy, when he wrote in his book, he said he didn't know he was a member of the McCoy clan until he was 35 years old, but yet when he wrote a book, he wrote a chapter on the history of the Hatfield-McCoy feud. So where did he get his history from? He got it from other books. So we agree with this gentleman there. But you know, he talks about these other books, and he goes from one book to the other, making a good case until he gets to the main end, and then he brings up Sam McCoy's book, 1931. Sam McCoy was there. Sam McCoy was a participant. Sam McCoy killed Bill Staten. Sam McCoy knew the history of the feud. He says Sam McCoy never mentioned, or he says that Sam McCoy mentions that there was a trial. Sam McCoy mentions a trial, but his details are vague. Sam does describe problems between various McCoys and Bill Staten. Sam does not say anything about Bill Staten's murder. Well, Sam's the man that killed Bill Staten, so he moved out of the area after that because he was afraid of death threats and different things. So, you know, I don't know if that's something you'd want to go around advertising it back in them days, still that close to the feud or not. So Sam's tale is more interesting for the things that he doesn't know than for what he claims to know. Is it that Sam doesn't know, or Sam didn't put them in his book? Just because something's not in the book doesn't mean that he doesn't know it. It just means he didn't list it in his book. Now, we've got the Sam McCoy book downstairs, and I meant to look at that before we got ready to do the video, but I forgot. But it's very thin. I don't know how many pages. I'd say 130 maybe. Not over 150. Small book. So, again, just because something's not in a book doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It just means that that author had other things that...
Chose not to put it in there.
Chose not to put it in there, or chose other important things that was more pressing to him. So when you say that something that's not in there, and that's a good statement, because again, sometimes it's what's not there that can prove a point, or the exculpatory evidence that somebody leaves out. I don't think Sam left out I don't think it was that important to him at the time. I don't think the pig trial was the important factor that he was trying to make in his book with as fewer pages as he had. And the way I understand it, other people finished Sam's book up later on in life anyway. One of the comments I want to make here, and you know, I hate to, one minute I say I'm not going to name people, and it's hard to make these corrections and not name people. But I'm going to try to not name, because I'm not naming the author of this story. So, but he says in here that no one remembered this story, and then suddenly in 1948, Virgil Carrington Jones discovered it. He's referring to Virgil Carrington Jones coming into the area and says he talked to an old woman there, and she gave him some of the story that he put in his book. Now, down here later, he says, did the woman tell him the story about the 6 Hatfields and McCoys? Now, that brings up another point that I'd read throughout this story. This gentleman doesn't believe the story about the 6 Hatfields and McCoys. Now, again, there's certain things in this feud that don't exist. The pig trial, the case file, and Sheila and I are big on evidence. We like documentation, physical evidence, but family members throughout years have talked about it. You know, there's only been, and I'm just going to have to mention names because, that's just, and he's been totally opposite. I don't know if it was to write a book or to take a different lead from everybody else, but Tom Dodson. Tom Dodson is the one that's questioned the pig trial. And he brought up all these, because Dean King was talking about the pig trial, and Trudy and McCoy talks about the pig trial. Virgil Carrington Jones talks about the pig trial. Several authors talk about the pig trial. Now, did some of them authors get some of their stories from the other author? Probably. That's the way this has worked. Tom Dodson wrote a book. Where did he get some of his stuff from? Other books. Mainly Altina Waller. But he talks about, in one point of this story, this gentleman talks about Preacher Ance Hatfield. An old country, an old hillbilly preacher, an old country boy. How did he, as a justice of the peace, how was he smart enough to come up with 6 Hatfields and 6 McCoys? I don't know if it's that smart educational wise or Bible wise. He gave the story there. He said he was a minister, a preacher, a deacon. Yeah, he was. Studied the Bible all of his life. What's one of my favorite stories? I don't know about everybody else. One of my favorite stories, and one of the smartest men that there ever was Solomon.
Wisdom of Solomon.
Wisdom of Solomon. When he come up with the woman that had rode over on her baby and killed it, and she was claiming the other woman's baby, and he said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And he said, I think I'll just cut the baby in half that's living and give each one of you half of it. The real mother, the fake mother said, yeah, I'll do that. The real mother said, no, don't do that. Give it to her. She'd rather see her baby given away as to see the baby killed. That was the real mother. And that's what, just because he's a country man, just because he's a hillbilly, just because he's not educated, if you want to call it that, doesn't mean that Preacher Ance Hatfield, as much as he read the Bible, and when he's looking at the Hatfields and McCoys over this pig, that he couldn't instill the wisdom of Solomon there. That Bible verse to him didn't come back. You've got two people fighting over the same thing. One in the Bible, it's a baby. In the Hatfields and McCoys, it's a pig. Big difference there, but back in them days,
I understand what you're saying.
Well, back in them days, a pig was valuable.
It was, because it fed a whole family.
That was their food source.
Yeah.
So to say that Preacher Ance couldn't have come up with the analogy of 6 Hatfields and 6 McCoys and let them make the decision, I think that's incorrect. But again, each person is afforded their own opinion, and that's what these are.
He had common sense.
Some of these are their own, and that's a good way to put it. He didn't have to be educated, he had common sense. Going back to the last thing I want to cover here, he talks about where Virgil Carrington Jones comes into the area, and he was asking Virgil Carrington Jones was talking to this old lady, and then this author here, this person that's doing this story, says otherwise she would have told the story to Tom Dodson's. See, this is where we have a distinct advantage, he says. As we try to piece this together, in the 1940s when Jones was on Blackberry Creek, that's where I grew up, Blackberry Creek, talking to folks and getting information, Tom Dodson was on Blackberry Creek too, talking to those people even more intimately. I'm not going to read all of that. Virgil Carrington Jones was on Blackberry Creek in 1940 40s, in the 1940s, in the 1940s, 41, 47, 49. When was it? Because Mr. Tom Dodson, according to his own bio, was born in 1941. He wasn't born until 1941. Virgil Carrington Jones was there doing his research for his book. But yet this gentleman says, little did Virgil Carrington Jones know that while he was there doing his research, Thomas Dodson was there doing his. Well, if he was born in 1941, and let's just say it's 49 when Virgil Carrington Jones was there, he's only 8 years old. Really? He's out there at 8 years old researching the feud and writing a book? Guys, you know, sometimes you have to take,
Wow.
just like this gentleman says, some things that's not there and so forth like that. And it's just, some of this feud stuff, it gets, you can steer a person in any way you want to steer them. You can
Power of
say
suggestion.
power of suggestion. Thanks, Sheila.
You're welcome.
And you can throw enough of knowledge out there of something pointing one way that you can convince these people there was no pig trial. Well, we don't know if there was a pig trial or not, Sheila and I don't, because to this day there has never been any evidence produced of a court case. Now, without a court case, tends to think that there's not. However, I know this personally. I'm not going to mention the name. Done a book on it. It's several years ago, but I know that there was this person because I was with him, and he would go by the Pikeville courthouse and he would get records for his father. His father was a big Hatfield McCoy feud researcher, and the clerks, at least one clerk, let's say, would give him. We'd go there to check on court records for a case or whatever, and she would hand them files for Hatfields and McCoys, of records that she'd found on the Hatfields and McCoys. And he'd take it and give it to his dad, tickled to death with it. Sometimes, it was usually copies of cases. Copies of the cases of the Hatfields and McCoys. There was times that when he would look at them, he'd say, this don't look like a copy. This is the original. I think she gave me the original record. And he said that about the pig trial. Now, whether that's true or not, whether that was the original pig trial that she didn't have time to copy for him, and this was way back. This was way back before Hatfield McCoy miniseries. This was way back before a lot of stuff. This was early years. Nobody thought Hatfield McCoy feud would ever be anything
Start
like
up
this.
again, or
Yeah. The research would be to this point. Yeah.
Fascination.
So, you know, the fact that there's no case there in mine and Sheila's mind, and the fact of the stories that I heard growing up, according to the ancestors, and being from the Hatfields and the McCoy stories, I think there was. We believe there was a trial.
There was.
We believe Preacher Ants was the justice of the peace. You know, again, these people, he says that there was a Matt Hatfield. Well, can we not find no record of a Matt Hatfield? Can we not find no genealogy? Can we not find out who in 1878 was the justice of the peace? He says that it wasn't Preacher Ants Hatfield. Who was it? With documentation. With documentation. Who was it? And if it wasn't Preacher Ants Hatfield, give us the documentation of who it was. If it was a Matt Hatfield, okay, there should be documentation. There should be court records. You know, if you saying that there's no court record and that's your case for saying there was no pig trial, but then you say, well, there's no record of the justice of the peace at that time, why would there be a record of a court case if there's not even a record of a justice of the peace? Was it before, or was it not that important? Again, there was pig trials. Ellis and Hatfield and 3 of his buddies stole 4 pigs from Asa Peter McCoy. Pig stealing was a common crime back then. We've got the court cases downstairs on the wall. So it's not like it was a murder case where one person was killed, or it happens every now and then. This was pig stealing. This was not that bigger of a deal as far as big crimes of that day. It's an interesting story, and it's an interesting way that the person made the case. Comes back at the end and puts Sam McCoy in there. All through here he says all these authors copied off of one another on the pig case, or added to or took away, and builds a good case, but he forgets. And then he puts the Sam McCoy case at the end. Sam McCoy was there.
Yep.
Sam McCoy was a participant.
He lived it.
Sam McCoy mentions the trial in his book. He doesn't elaborate on it. He doesn't elaborate on killing Floyd Hatfield. He doesn't elaborate. I'm sorry.
Bill Staten.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Sheila. Bill Staten.
Mm-hmm.
He does, and I think a while ago I mentioned something about that. So I'm talking about Bill Staten. That it's getting late. This is going to be our last video today. It don't matter if it's late or not. My mind does that. But Bill Staten.
Right.
He doesn't elaborate on Bill Staten. He doesn't elaborate Sam McCoy doesn't elaborate on a lot of things. That doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Guys, it's Fred and Sheila McCoy.
Hi guys. Hope you're having, look at me. Hope you're having a great night. Please like, subscribe, and share. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
Thank you, guys.